Good Yantif. Exactly 1 year ago today, I watched my father take his last breath. 4 days later, my grief and trauma became mixed up with everyone else's. And the day after that, my family and I experienced the most profound act of kindness. My friends and neighbors surprised me by planting a memorial garden in front of my house to honor my father. I came home to find a random assortment of plants and saplings, some still in bloom, some beginning to wither, and I broke down sobbing. I couldn't imagine a more loving or meaningful gesture. My dad was a landscape architect. When I was born, he gave out plants rather than cigars. We both grew up in Miami, so he taught me the botanical name of practically every tropical plant species. And whenever he came up north to visit our family, he'd ask, horrified, "Are you trying to have the ugliest yard on the street?" Of course not. I was trying to keep 3 boys alive and had no time to tend to gardens. My sons tromped through bushes. They peed in bushes. And one time, one of them ran through bushes at dusk, tearing an eyelid badly enough to require 8 stitches. Flowers? But 2 of my sons no longer live at home, and the 3rd is getting ready to leave the nest. I'm the one running now, obsessively listening to podcasts as I cover miles around my neighborhood. And every morning when I come back from my workout, I marvel at the way this little garden has evolved with the seasons, wishing I could send photos to my dad of the tiny purple iris buds or the echinacea that draws goldfinches to its petals. I know he would love the beauty of what is coming from the earth, but he would also quell over the kindness of the gesture itself. He was the kindest man anyone had ever known. A year ago in Yom Kippur, which was then at the end of September, my father and I had our last meaningful conversation. He told me he wasn't afraid of dying, but he was afraid of doing it wrong. I assured him that he wouldn't be alone, and I promised that we wouldn't judge him afterwards. Time moved slowly in those 9 days I spent helping my dad pass from one world to the next. In a lot of ways, it felt like childbirth, but in reverse. Vital signs were checked, arms were stroked, breaths were counted, lullabies were sung. We sat quietly in limbo between 2 worlds, the one we know and the one that is unknowable. I watched as my father, completely unconscious, raised his arms and moved his lips, quelling any doubts about whether there was someone waiting for us on the other side. I'm on another side of my own life now, a daughter without a father. I've coped with that grief by tending his garden. I've wondered, when it was covered in snow, what dormant magic might be happening under the earth. I learned to identify weeds, clearing them away in early spring to make room for the blooms that surprised me as the days grew warmer. Then one morning, this past June, as I was communing with the flowers, I watched one of my neighbors struggling to get her kids out of the house. In her harried movements, I saw a younger version of myself. I was still picking weeds when she returned from the bus stop a few minutes later, looking like she had been through a war. It was the last week of school, so already you know. And one of her daughters was bringing a board game to class per the teacher's invitation, the game of life. As the bus approached, her daughter had dropped the box, and the pieces went everywhere. You know how many pieces are in the game of life? About 11 billion. So what happened? I asked her, wondering if the game was still strewn across Grove Street. Oh, she said, everybody swooped in to help pick up the pieces. I just stared at her and said, that is perfect. Because the game of life is always dropping. But if we have friends and neighbors to help pick up the pieces, to plant gardens, then ultimately we win. As we welcome in the new year, may we be written in the book of life. But even more, may we pick up each other's pieces and experience acts of kindness, both small and profound. Shana Tova.